Hello, Whovians, and welcome back to the third channel. Woo! We are back doing more interviews. Ooh. As you saw in my last interview, I had mentioned, which was Wednesday at the time of recording / uploading, I mentioned I had a new interview on Friday, and you're probably watching this on Saturday. Shut up, phone. You're probably watching this on Saturday, probably, because if you watch Taskmaster World, you would obviously know why, because that other thing will also be on Saturday. Anyway, so today we have a special guest. She is best known for appearing on Taskmaster UK Series 14 and for the BBC Scotland programme go viral. I won't say the beginning of it without giving it away. It's the one and only Fern Brady.
Hello.
Hello. So let's go right back to the beginning. How did you get into comedy?
Well, when I was at university, I thought I wanted to be a journalist, so I worked for my uni newspaper. And in the summer, I was working for arts magazine, and they asked me to try stand up. But secretly, I'd been wanting to do stand up, but I was too shy to do it. And whenever I mentioned it to my family, they were just a bit like, "What are you talking about?" But then, because this magazine said, "Oh, you have to go and try it for an article," that pushed me into doing it.
Yeah.
And then after I did it, after I did my first gig, I waited a year, but I was like secretly applying to loads of gigs. So I started in 2010. I moved to England about 4 months after starting stand up. And then, so I've been doing it for 12 years. But I think I was doing normal jobs for the first 3 or 4 years before I could do it full time.
Yeah. And was it a tricky 12 years doing stand up?
Well, yeah, there's lots of different stages of it. Basically, when you start stand up, you're losing money from it because you're basically paying for train tickets to go and do gigs all over. Like, I've been at everywhere in England, honestly, at this point. Every terrible pub, I've done a gig in it. So initially you're losing money to do gigs. Then you get to a point where you're not losing money, but you're not making money either. And then finally you get to the point where you're making money. So it's been very up and down, but I'd say for the last few years it's been really nice.
And then as a child, was there any like TV shows that inspired you to think you might want to get into the field you ended up being in?
No, not at all. I never watched stand up until I think I was like 21 when I first saw stand up. But the biggest influence on me comedy wise was the show Black Books.
Yeah.
I think of that as an autistic TV show. Like, if you think about it, it's about the grumpy owner of a bookshop and he hates being around other people. He's really antisocial. Um, yeah, like, so I loved Black Books and I used to watch it over and over again. And I watched Father Ted over and over. And I watched a lot of really dark stuff, lots of Tim Burton films growing up. So
Yeah. Yeah, and with like when you're in the UK, you see a lot of like not many people I know watch a lot of Scottish comedy because they're not weird like me. Because I really like
weird to like Scottish comedy, Tom.
because no one else has ever seen Still Game that I know of anyway.
Oh yeah, I don't watch Stillgate. Well, you've just reminded me. So when I was growing up, I didn't really connect to any Scottish comedy at all. And then the first time I saw anything Scottish where I connected with it was Lemmy. Have you
Yeah.
ever seen Lemmy's comedy? Yeah, so and I'd say for a lot of people my age that's one of the bigger things. But things like Still Game, Chewing the Fat, any of that stuff, I just couldn't get into it at all. Because it's all old men.
Well, they really were old men, no matter what age that they were playing old men. But what was interesting with Still Game is that the I can't remember the character's name. She was a cleaner. I don't know. Anyway, she was on a program when I was younger called Me Too, which wasn't what you're expecting. It was about this nanny, and she looked after the children. And it was a program that Chris McLaughlin was on, where he played he played a market shop owner, and one of the episodes was about him accidentally giving the wrong orange to the wrong person, which is a quite bizarre sort of concept for an episode, because he couldn't see to begin with, so he wouldn't know who he's giving what to in the first place. But as of last night was Thursday, you were on Taskmaster UK series 14. And what was your favourite task that you filmed for that series?
Oh, well, I'm glad it's one that's already been on. The singing task.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, that was my favourite. There's also a team task coming up that I liked, but it's not been on yet. And the Travelator thing that was on last night, that was my favourite one to watch back in studio because I was like laughing so much. But all the airport tasks I really didn't enjoy.
Yeah. And was it really like empty, Gatwick? Was it, or was there a few people knocking about?
No. So basically, a lot of people keep asking if we filmed at night. We filmed during the day, but the Gatwick South Terminal was closed. They'd been doing it up or something like that. But also, the lady who's in charge of filming stuff at Gatwick is a massive Taskmaster fan. So yeah, that's how we got to do it apparently. So it was completely empty, but you still had to go through security. You had to go through a totally empty security thing. I was wearing my costume at the time, and the security guy was just like rolling his eyes at me. And then, if you even wanted to go to the toilet during filming, members of staff had to accompany you because they have all these like rules around Gatwick. But yeah, totally empty apart from like maybe 20 staff.
Yeah. And with you being on Taskmaster, had you seen any of the international versions of the show before?
No, I only had enough time to watch UK versions, and I actually didn't even know there was so many versions till I filmed the studio bits. But weirdly, I know people from New Zealand's Taskmaster. So like, Paul Williams.
Yeah.
So he's been to a couple of my shows. And then Guy Montgomery, I know him from gigging in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Who else done? I think that's it. Yeah, I know them too.
Well, it turned out, and I caught on it very quickly, that the task from last night's episode where you were holding the milk,
Yeah.
that's actually an adaptation of a task from the New Zealand version.
Oh, right. Yeah, and I heard the Sabotage, they've taken that from New Zealand as well.
Yeah. And but with the milk one, they changed it ever so slightly, because the milk one in the New Zealand version was like who can hold it for the longest time rather than waiting for the shortest this time. And I caught on that like very quickly, because it felt a little bit fishy when I saw the milk, and I thought, that looks
Yeah.
very familiar. But it turns out that Alex is in a WhatsApp group chat with Paul Williams from New Zealand and David Sundin from Sweden. So so that they have a conversation, and they met each other recently in France, because they all went for an Avalon party. Avalon invited them all there for a party.
Well, yeah, I think Paul Williams is a good fit for New Zealand Taskmaster because he'd be kind of similar to Alex personality wise, and he's like quite an unusual guy. Hope he doesn't mind me saying that.
Yeah, he is very unusual. I interviewed him last year. We spent 2 hours talking about how he was stalking Jermaine Clements by accident, not on purpose. And he was cut from the What Do We Do in the Shadows film, because he was just there because Paul was just there in the background by accident.
But everyone in New Zealand knows each other anyway.
Yeah,
It's
so
tiny.
it's bound to. So not only have you appeared on TV shows, you also created a program. So where was the idea behind Fern Brady's Go Viral? How did the idea of that come about?
You watch it?
Yeah, I've seen it all.
How did it come about? I really am. I find it embarrassed I did that, to be honest. Oh, how did it come about? I think BBC Scotland were like, "Do you want to make a program with us?" Um, well, I'll tell you what I regret about that program. It's sort of making fun of people that make online content, which is a really old-fashioned view because everyone that makes online stuff now is way ahead of traditional stand-ups, like Munya that's on Taskmaster with us, or I really like that chicken shop date girl. Like all the people that make online content are so far ahead. So for me to do a program that's making fun of people that make that stuff is really, I just cringe at it. But I was buying a house at the time, so I had to get my mortgage over the line.
Well, if you want to watch the program, it's still available on the BBC.
Oh, don't advertise it! It's not available. Don't watch it.
I thought I quite enjoyed it.
What? Please watch my stand-up special on BBC iPlayer.
That is also quite good. But to go on a more
Yeah.
But going on a more positive spin, you did a day program that hopefully will get a second series called British as Folk.
No, it's not getting a second series.
Well, it was quite good. And what was it like filming that?
It was really good fun.
Well, I wish it got a second series, but I don't think many people want to see people being attacked by flying birds for a second time because Darren didn't seem very happy about that.
Oh, well, no, I think he enjoyed that one the most. I hated it. But it was really, yeah, that was a really fun program. And also the producer of that used to, anytime we were really cold or tired from filming, because we were filming outdoors a lot, they would say, "This is your training for Taskmaster. Remember, everyone, this is your training ground." So then when I got Taskmaster, I text the producer of British as Folk to be like, "This is nothing like British as Folk. Taskmaster treat me really well. They always make sure I'm warm. They always give me nice snacks." So yeah.
Yeah, and Dave are trying to find the new version of Taskmaster. That's why they produced Outsiders just to try and work out can David Mitchell be the new version of Greg if Greg ever decided to retire, which I don't think.
Everyone's trying to. That's how you can tell how successful Taskmaster is that every other program pitch is trying to be like Taskmaster.
Yeah.
But I do really want to do Outsiders because I've done a couple of radio things with David Mitchell, and he's so nice, and that's good because I grew up watching Peep Show.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
David does seem like a nice person, and he seems like a nice fit. But the way I describe Outsiders is I say, if you like Scouts and you like comedians making fools out themselves, you'll like that.
Oh, really?
It works really well because it's the Scout element of badges, and it's the idiot side of comedians. I just feel really sorry for John. He's makes a fool out of himself, but he also makes people feel sorry for him.
On Taskmaster.
Well, just in general, because I saw him on Sunday brunch. He didn't.
Oh, I was so jealous that he got on Sunday brunch. I've just been asking today if I can do Sunday brunch because it's my dream in life to get on Sunday brunch.
It's a very good program, but John just seemed too sad. I was a little bit concerned that he was upset.
He probably is just not used to being up that early.
He probably isn't. But not only have you filmed a program for BBC Scotland, you're also now currently, as of the time of this recording, you're currently the head judge on the BBC New Comedy Awards. What was it like being the head judge on the BBC New Comedy Awards?
Horrible. I just finished that job on, I think Tuesday was the final, and I'm so glad it's over. Not because I mean, because everyone was so good that it was really embarrassing to be the head judge. As you said, my stand-up special is only quite good, and these were comedians that were very good. So yeah, I regretted taking the job a bit because it was horrible when pretty much every single semi-final there was like two or three comedians that we wanted to put through, and we were only allowed to put one through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the final of that will be out 9th. Is it the 9th of November? And it was really, really good. They all did really well.
Yeah, and it works really well on BBC Three, but it could have been on BBC Two. I mean, they could have given it more sense because it's just sort of like not many people would see it if it was on BBC Three because it came back and all you can watch is the same rubbish you're watching before on BBC Three. Some of it's
Well,
good.
it's actually the final's gonna be on BBC One or BBC Two. So it will be on there.
That, that's good because the program's quite good. It reminds me of a little bit of like a low budget version of Live at the Apollo without the
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
also, it will be cool to watch back years from now because most of the people in it, will, if not all of them, will end up being professional comedians. So now we've got footage of their early sets.
Yeah, and that was why the Edinburgh Fringe this year was quite good because then you could see new comedians in your home. And one of the things that I quite enjoyed, I say quite because if they had streamed this any other year, it would have been even better. But I quite like So You Think You're Funny,
I was in that.
which coincidentally, what was it
Oh,
like? What was it like? What did it change your life after you had done it?
yeah, yeah, it did. It did. It was really significant. It's definitely one of the ones that changes things. So, um, I met my first agent at it. And I also, I remember after, one of the cool bits after was Joe Lycett, who was like a couple of years above me. He came up and he was like, I hear you're in So You Think You're Funny. This is wonderful. And I just was like so buzzing about it. So yeah, it's a good one for getting respect off other comedians and good to put it on your CV. Because when you're a new comedian, you're just a worm and you have to crawl your way up,
Yeah.
and competitions really make a difference.
And you were saying there that Joe Lycett was years above. Are we treating comedy now like
So
a school system?
that's how we refer to it sometimes. So even though I think Joe's like actually younger than me, a couple of years younger than me, he would be considered 2 or 3 years above me in our at school in the school of comedy.
Yeah. Uh,
So
and that's what's interesting because now comedy is now like stand up is like so many people. It's interesting to see like when you watch let's say a panel show, just think of a random panel show for viewers, you'll get my drift in a minute. And there's so many new comedians on there and it's so good to see them. And then when they go into Taskmaster, at that point you've sort of made it within the British scene because you've known well enough to be considered what Alec would call the Taskmaster famous enough system, which
yeah.
is probably made up that. So
But it's funny that me and John are considered new comedians on it, and me and John have been going for 12 and I don't know 14 years respectively, but
yeah.
we're considered new.
Well, John might be new in the sort of TV aspect because he's been doing Guessable, which is on Comedy Central. So
Yeah, I did an episode of it.
to be fair, it's one of my favourite panel shows that Comedy Central do. Growing Pains can get a little bit repetitive after a while, so Guessable's a good change from the system because Growing Pains is on like quite a lot, but it is quite good. But Guessable is very good because it's like you don't know what round they're going to be in it because there's like so many rounds, and then John's quite unusual on it, but that's his persona anyway. Uh, but Guessable. What was it like being on Guessable? Because it is such a unique program.
I had a lot more fun on Guessable than I do on a lot of other panel shows because there were games. Because a lot of panel shows are traditionally based on banter, group banter, and because I'm autistic, I just kind of tune out of it, or I tend to pitch banter really wrong and just say something like awful and offensive instead. Um, so anything where there's a game, I enjoy a lot more. Actually, Guessable was similar. There was another panel show I did called "There's Something About Movies" that was on Sky.
That is also another good one because I
Yeah,
never
yeah, that was you get to do acting with like a proper famous actor on it.
and I'd never expected Michael Sheen to ever do a panel show.
So weird.
That was really weird. But the one because I do media at college, so it's
Mm.
so I find it even more hilarious because I understand the nuance of the scene they're trying to. And when there was one episode where they tried to recreate Pulp Fiction, and it's weird when Alan Carter has to dress up because it's just unexpected. And it's still funny. But what was it like doing that? Because that is like an unusual time show. Because it's half normal, your regular panel show, half like a mixture of like all the improvisation type programs.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. And then I was saying to my agent, "Oh, can I do that again?" And he was like, "It's been cancelled." So I was like, "Ugh." But I think the good thing about the influence of Taskmaster is more and more non-traditional comedy formats are coming out. By which I mean the sort of tired panel show format seems to be gradually dying out.
Yeah, and now modern panel shows now are less like here's two teams on a desk. Here
Oh,
some
Christ,
some
yeah.
waist upward. Now you have here's a bunch of comedians in a tent running about being it, or here's some panelists being tortured by Alex on for a couple of weeks, or
Yeah,
Alex being
people,
tortured by them.
yeah, people always say about Alex torturing us. I got on with him so well. That was one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much. I didn't anticipate that I would get on with him so well.
And in one of the episodes of Taskmaster, spoilers if you've not seen it, but you should be watching it.
Yeah, deal with it.
There's the episode where you had shoved Alex into a tube.
Yeah.
Uh, what were they like doing that? Because he seemed to have more fun than the others.
Well, you know what I thought was interesting with that one was I don't like to think of that women all do one thing and men all do another. But don't you think it's interesting that Dara, John, and Munya all did sporty things, whereas me and Sarah immediately decided to torture Alex?
Yeah, yeah. Because I didn't think Dara would be a sporty person.
Oh yeah, he is. He was so competitive, man. Like he was really competitive. It's such a shame he got put on a team with me and John.
I can just imagine Dara being really competitive doing the egg and spoon race at Sports Day.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the barrels. That was at the time I remember thinking this is the happiest day of my working life. I was just so I just felt like the purest happiness. But at one point I threw a banana and it smacked Alex in the face and his nose started like trickling blood and I felt guilty at that.
Oh, that, but Alex has done so much for Taskmaster. He's A, written for it, and B, then
Yeah.
some cakes. And that's why the Haunt Section TV program is such a good fit for him, because then he gets to say how much he wants to do his own thing and be his own person rather than being tortured for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the programs that you've done that doesn't really seem something that we would see in the UK because it's not really a thing we do, but apparently Comedy Central thought it was a good idea, which when you read about it, yes, it's a good idea. When you watch it, sometimes it's not a good idea, but some,
Oh, you're gonna say roast
yeah,
battle.
I am going to say roast battle. What was it like doing that? Because that just doesn't seem something that would be very British.
I don't have any connection to the notion of being British. I mean, my family are Irish Catholics, so to be honest, I was surprised so many people were weird about roast battle, because if you're a comedian, doing roasts is this really traditional thing. But I did see, I mean, you would be in the majority, like, of people that have that view, and I saw some older British comedians grumbling about, well, it's not a nice format to have, and it's like, and the crucial thing about roast battle is they never put you with your actual enemy. So the two times I did roast battle, I did it with friends. They tried to pair me up with a comedian that I didn't like, and I was like, no way, there's no way I could do that. I can't see who it is before you ask.
Well, it was a good program when it was on, but it's just like when you think of roasts, well, when you Google roasts on YouTube, it's normally like here's a celebrity being mean about another subject.
Oh, like when they have roasts of a
Yeah,
celebrity.
yeah, and it's that type of thing, and it just seemed not for the UK version of the format roast battle work. I just would have thought we would have got a referee that was British rather than an American, because then it felt more natural.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But the reason they did that is a contractual thing, because that guy that was the referee, he owned the format to the program. So it's the same as, you know how like Alex came up with Taskmaster
Yeah,
and he owns the format. So that's why he's in the program and he's an exec producer on it. So yeah, that's why that guy was in it.
yeah,
But roast battle ended up being the best thing I've ever done in terms of how many tour tickets it sells.
yeah,
Because you can never really anticipate what programs are going to sell you tickets. Like you would think Live at the Apollo would be the biggest
yeah.
thing. Roast battle, I still get messages about it because it circulates on TikTok and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, it made a big difference. But there have been cases of comedians falling out with each other over roast battle.
Yeah, and it works really well. And one of the things that you never see on many other programs is Alex Brooker being on the program itself, because you wouldn't put Alex Brooker as a comedian per se, because
Yeah,
he was originally a journalist, and he doesn't seem like the type of person who would go into comedy, but he's ended up falling into it by accident. But
yeah,
his episode of Rose Battle is like both funny and a little bit unusual, because Alex doesn't do many panel shows to begin with, so it was like a weird concept of seeing him on Comedy Central in the first place. But he was very good at it, and hopefully he ends up being on Taskmaster one day. If Alex Horn's watching, get Alex Brooker involved in Taskmaster, because he would be good at it. But going back to the um concept of panel shows, you've also done comedians giving lectures.
oh yeah. I didn't do well on that though. I was really busy at the time, and I wasn't sure whether I should do it because I had a lot on. So I weren't really happy about that one.
And do you prepare the lectures yourself, or does the research team and the production team do that for you?
No, not the researcher, but I had a writer that I used sometimes, did some topical stuff. But then the thing is I don't like doing that because I would rather write things myself, because everything I do on TV is like an advert for someone coming to my tour show. So I
Yeah.
would rather I want to write stuff in my voice so that then people come and watch me do a show that corresponds to that. But yeah, but I do think other episodes of comedians giving lectures that I haven't featured on were very good.
Well, I mean, the shows are a hit or miss, but my brother's only ever seen like one episode, because my brothers don't really care for many panel shows.
Yeah.
But the one episode he did watch was Frankie Boyle was I can't remember the topic he was on about. He was on about summer, and it was the thing my brother was studying at uni, so he thought, oh, this would be really educational.
What's he studying?
I think he was economic. My brother's doing economics and law, which compared to me and him are like yin and yang, chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
And he thought, oh, this would be really helpful because I should be studying rather than watching TV. and then it didn't help him at all because it was Frankie Boyle to begin with. So it was a sort of waste of his time because he instead of doing normal revision, he was watching Frankie Boyle Witter on for 20 odd minutes, which I find hilarious. Which I don't think he did. But not only have you done telly and done stand up and done all sorts, you've also got a podcast called The Wheel of Misfortune. What's it like doing it, and B, how did it come about?
Oh, well, I don't do it anymore, but I just did it with basically my best mate, Alison. We didn't have we lost our jobs because of lockdown because we couldn't do live comedy. So then we were like, how can we make money? And then the sort of quickest way was to try and get a podcast going. We have the same sense of humor where we laugh about a lot of really dark stuff like funerals and mental illness and things like that. So we just wanted to talk about our most embarrassing moments, and we spin a wheel to pick a different topic every week. But then the podcast got more popular than I anticipated, and we started doing, like, if we did gigs in London, we honestly did a gig in London where like hundreds of screaming women turned up. And then I left. I had to leave. I couldn't say at the time when I was leaving, but I had to leave because I was filming Taskmaster. That was one of the reasons. I was doing about 4 different jobs. I was doing Taskmaster, writing my book, getting my new tour show ready, and doing the podcast and gigging. And I was like, I have to quit one of these jobs.
Yeah.
But now, do you know who replaced me as the co-host?
No.
Kerry Katona.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's completely the opposite.
I don't know if I would say if you were who is the opposite to Kerry Katona, that it would be me. But it's I think it's a step up. So yeah, the podcast's still going without me. So that's good.
Well, the podcast is available on all podcast platforms, including BBC Sounds, which I never understand how you get your podcast on BBC Sounds. So if anyone working at BBC Sounds is watching,
they'll hate this.
I've got many podcasts for you to. I've got 7 to be specific for you to listen to and work out which one's actually good. So because one of them's good, you're just going to have to do that research yourself. As I do 7, so one's bound to be good. So you mentioned there that you're working on your book. What is for anyone that might not know, what is your book about?
Oh, well, I got diagnosed autistic about be coming up to 2 years ago, I think. But I knew I had it from when I was 16. And a lot of women don't get diagnosed with autism until much later than they should. So I thought I would write a book about that. But also I had quite a mad life before I did stand up. So yeah, it's a mixture of mad stories that happened to me before stand up, and it all uses autism as a reference point.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to write the book?
I think well, I started writing it before I got the book deal, so it would have been, I'm gonna say it took 2 years. Yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah. And did you enjoy the feeling of writing a book?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it a lot. And I want to write more.
Yeah, because that's why Richard Osman stepped away from Pointless, because he enjoyed writing too much.
It's great. The only downside is you get too used to being in your house, and you don't, like, I've got to go to a gig tonight, and I'm already trying to think how I can get out of it, because I just can't be bothered to like being at home too much now.
Yeah, and I do agree. The outside world is Well, it's cold, so
In both ways. It's a cold and frightening place.
the more you can stay indoors, the better.
And also November, you probably know this, but November is prime time for TV watching. All the good series get released now.
Yeah, apart from if you're on BBC One on a Saturday night where too much gets like I've heard a lot of people complain about every quiz show being on like one after the other on a Saturday night on BBC One.
Oh, do you like quiz shows? Because my boyfriend likes them and I hate them.
I quite they're quite good. They're good when you know the answer. It's it's always good to know the answers. So I'm not very good at Only Connect.
That's the one my boyfriend's always watching, but also he fancies Victoria Coren. So, and I met her at a gig once and told her.
Yeah, well, she's also been on Taskmaster, but I never expected.
Yes.
She was the unexpected contestant because she's A, not a comedian, and
Yeah.
and B, wouldn't have expected it to be funny because she's a very serious presenter. Well, didn't.
Yeah. Do you know she's like a gambling champion as well, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's in a poker or something.
She used to do poker, and so did Richard. Richard Herring used to host some poker program.
No way.
Yeah, on some random Sky poker channel that no one's ever heard of. And he said in one of his where he had interviewed the coffee major from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So
who's your favorite Taskmaster contestant?
I think from the UK version, it's got to be Mike Wozniak because no one else can have a task where you have to fart.
Yeah, that's going the extra mile, is making your hemorrhoids come out.
Yeah, and when I was doing some college work where we had to research them, and I ended up showing the media teacher Mike Wozniak farting, and he had no idea what he was watching or why he was watching it, but he thought, right, okay, and then just walked off very slowly.
I remember meeting him when I was brand new, and what I like about, I think people that do best in Taskmaster are people who are themselves on and off the stage, and the person he is in Taskmaster is who he is, I'd say.
Yeah, well, he's best known for his tash now. Well, he always was known for his tash, but his tash, the one that he's most famous for, Mike was yet now, is his fact about animal, the bee. I think it was a bee song for his prize task, where he riffed off a song no one else decided to sing, but he sang, and that's what he's most famous for now in the world of Taskmaster.
He did a song as well.
Yeah, it was saying like none of the others did it, but it was a thing you can't carry. So he was on about carrying a tune. So he said he couldn't carry a tune, and then he sang really well, so he could carry a tune.
Yeah.
He was very good at singing. So going back to talking about your book, you've also done an audio book.
Well, no, I'm recording the audiobook next month.
Well, it's out on February the summer 2023.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and so how have you prepared for reading an audio book? Because it would take, because it seems to be like a thing that would take a while, because Peter Kay has only just recorded his audiobook for his book he released 12 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, now you said that, I haven't done any preparation, but my mate, Phil, do you know Phil Wang?
Yeah.
You know Phil that was in Taskmaster as well. When he did his audiobook, he said he got a very dry mouth. So what a lot of people do is they record their audiobook all day long in the space of about 4 days. And I was like, I think I'll get worn out if I do that. So I'm just doing 3 hours at a time, which means I'm spending most of December doing the audiobook.
Well, Bob Mortimer's audiobook, he every so often you hear him heavily breathe because he's trying to catch his breath. And and then he sounds like he needs, and then he would have a whole sentence where he sounds like he needs to cough.
Oh no. I guess I'm gonna do loads of vocal warm-ups and try and enunciate and do drama school exercises. What are you supposed to go? The teeth, the lips, the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips, the tip of the tongue.
I've never heard of that. I've heard the me.
Okay, well, another comedian told me that's like a drama school warm-up.
Well, I mean, in drama schools, you do all sorts. I've never been to a specific drama school. I've never been to a drama school, but they're always all about their exercises, whether that's of the mouth or the feet, because they do the play or that dance. I don't know. They're all the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound mad. They have to do stuff where they like curl up on the floor and pretend to be a baby. They do all sorts of drama school. Sounds awful.
Or they pretend they're a tree.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's the standard practice. If you can't do drama, well, you can't do a tree. Because you have to be a good tree to be a good drama person. That sounded weird as it came out of my mouth.
That's all right. I mean, I feel that way all the time about stuff I say.
Yeah, yeah, I can see what you mean with that. And so with being on Taskmaster,
Mhm.
what's your next goal for what's your next program that you want to be on now that Taskmaster is the jumping on point because of it being on primetime Channel 4?
Well, I haven't really thought about what other programs I want to do. Cause I'm mainly like doing stand up. I'm just getting ready to tour my show, and then I want to film that stand up show. So that's the main thing. I'm doing this Alan Davies thing in December. I think
Yeah.
it's like a chat show.
Yes, it's
Um,
it's as yet untitled.
yeah. So I think I'm doing that. But other than that, honestly, like, I don't really. I'm just thinking about the tour and the book coming out. I wouldn't mind doing that Outsiders thing though, because my friend just did that and said it was good.
Yeah, well, with Alan Davis's Yet Untitled, what always strikes me about it, and it might just be me, but I always thought that the table looked like the lid of a coffin.
Oh well, I'll do it and get back to you on that.
Because it's
There's
like,
bodies inside.
it's the legs on the bottom, but it just seemed really odd. But the latest series that finished a year ago, which I didn't believe it's been a year since it last came on, is all available on UK TV Play and extended versions on Audible, because it's also a podcast, because it's a chat. Now what they do is they have the TV version, and then if you say something that isn't TV appropriate, they leave it in for the Audible listeners.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So that if you say if like there's a certain word that Ofcom aren't going to be very happy with, Audible don't care, and they just release anything. So you can say whatever you like for the Audible version, and the editors will get an axe and go on their cutting spree.
Oh, cool.
They'll use an axe like they're chopping down a tree, but it's actually a razor really. When you edit things, it's a razor more than an axe, but
Yeah.
they all do the same. They all cut down things. And have you ever met Alan Davis before?
Yeah, he was on my episode of Guessable.
Yeah, he was. Obviously, he was. I didn't
Oh
think.
yeah, because he's on all the time, isn't he?
Yeah,
And I'd also prior to that, I'd only met him. We walked past each other as I was coming off stage, and he was walking on at a gig.
yeah.
And he
And
sort of went,
is Alan as nice as he seems on TV?
yeah. I mean, if he wasn't, I'm not a very good liar, so you would know. Yeah, he was nice. I didn't speak to him very much off camera, but yeah, he was nice.
Yeah, and with Guessable, how when they have the choosing of who do you reckon going to be in this car, which photograph have they nicked off Google this time and put into a frame in the box? How do you like? when do you have time to discuss that? Because Alan always keeps on saying how, oh, we've had a big discussion, but when you see the whole program, there's been no discussion had.
Honestly, you know the program better than me because I don't even remember that bit. All I can remember is I had a really good time on it because weirdly, well, maybe it's not weird, it's maybe just the nature of time passing and being in comedy for a longer time. Everyone on that episode was people I was friends with, almost like because I know Alfie Brown that was on it, Darren, Harriet, and John, and then like Alan's nice. So I just had a really good time on it, but I can't remember the format.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what was going on.
Neither does me dad when he watches it.
Yeah, it's quite chaotic.
Yeah. Is there a real audience there, or is it what the weirdos that only know American comedy call cam laughter?
I think that one there might have just been the audience might have just been crew.
And so with your like roster of TV shows, do you with and your stuff just in general, do you think you'll ever get to go on Graham Norton?
I can't see it happening. I don't know. I never. The weird thing is I never meant to do TV stuff. I just meant to do stand up, and then yeah. So I don't know. I haven't thought of that.
Mm.
I just like doing gigs.
Yeah, and so it is when you do it, do you think that an audience that come and watch the gig are a better audience than the ones that come and watch when a live TV show is being recorded?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so with the way that comedy is now, and there's been so many people, do you so is it like would you say that like gigs you go to, more people turn up because comedy has now become an even bigger thing than it was previously?
Well, I'd say the comedy scene is really healthy now. But the reason I'm finding it hard to answer is because the types of gigs I was doing 10 years ago are really different to what I'm doing now. So mostly now I do my own hour-long show, whereas 10 years ago I would be like begging to do 5 minutes at a pub in Sheffield on a Friday or something.
Yeah.
But definitely the UK has a really healthy scene, especially compared to America, because I've met some American comedians when I've been gigging abroad, and they're always saying like, "Oh, UK comedians are so spoiled because we can make money without being famous or without being on much TV." Whereas in America, they don't. They either make no money at all or they make loads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for people that are watching this, so let's say my classic example, example I've not used in a while. Right. So imagine this is Doris. Right. She's 82. She's fed up of sitting at home because she's been retired for the last 50 years, and she
Yeah.
wants to get into comedy. What advice would you give 82-year-old Doris?
Oh my God, that's a really hard one. That's really, really hard because more than anything in comedy, age really counts against you. But I'd say to Doris, here's a lot of comedians that started when they're older and they're successful. Mickey Flanagan, Sarah Millican, I think, was a bit older than the average when she started. Greg Davies, notoriously, was older when he started, but it meant that he pursued comedy even harder. So, Doris, you've got about 8 years left if you live in the south of England. In Scotland, you're going to be dead by next week. You should be dead already. So you really have to throw everything at stand up and just pursue it. And if you think about it, if you're at death's door, you could be a comedian that was even edgier than Frankie Boyle. You would say anything.
And so if so with you being on Taskmaster,
Yeah.
Do you reckon? Is there a group chat where all of you chat? Because the common phrase with the Taskmaster globally is that comedians always talk together, and in some cases go on holiday together. Are you lot? Have you lot managed to plan a holiday, or is that not on the card because you're very busy?
No, weirdly, I was in Canada with Dara in July, but it wasn't just me and Dara on holiday. Let's take a holiday without John. Um, but there's a comedy festival in Montreal, and I went for basically Dara was on this showcase of British comedy, which is weird because he's not even he's Irish. Anyway, I went for breakfast with him and James Acaster and Phil Wang, and we were talking about Taskmaster. But James Acaster was like, I don't want to know what happens. And Dara was like, a very big thing happens with John. And I was really surprised that James didn't want spoilers because I didn't know that other comedians watched it.
Well, Ed Gamble clearly watching it because he's now been on the show and twice, and he has his own podcast, which you've been on once.
Yeah. So Ed's seen all the episodes for this series, and he loves it. Yeah, he's really nice. He's always been dead nice to me.
And I quite like really liked the Taskmaster podcast so much, and I love saying this, but I loved it so much I ripped it off and created my own podcast called Taskmaster World the Podcast. It's basically his podcast, removed the UK element, and I interview people from every other version, which has gone very well because I've interviewed the Swedish Taskmaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very nice, but she's the second female Taskmaster, but the first female Taskmaster to still be on the air as of
cool.
because the Spanish version failed horrifically because there were 6 people on it instead of 5.
Right.
And so coming now to the end of the interview, this is your time to promote whatever you like. What would you like to promote to the wonderful viewers of the TGM production, The Empire?
Oh, please just buy my book when it comes out, and also come to one of my tour shows. But most of them they've sold out really fast from Taskmaster. It's mental. Like last night, I checked my London tickets after the episode had been on, and they just all sold out. I was really buzzing.
Wow. So there we have it. That was another wonderful interview. If you want to see more interviews by yours truly, then either stay tuned for, if this is uploaded on Saturday, stay tuned, or stay tuned, same thing. And remember, no, I've forgotten.